On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina. All right, everybody, I'm here with Chris Giacchino of the Cleveland Indians organization. Chris, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for having me. First time, so I'm definitely excited for it. A little bit about myself. Went to school originally to be an athletic trainer. Decided that, I wasn't in love with that. Did an internship with Brahesh Patel at Quinnipiac University, and then kind of fell in love with strength and conditioning. From then on, I finished my athletic training degree, but also double majored in exercise science. That sort of like set the path for me in terms of where I am now. I'm originally from Massachusetts, just outside Boston. After my internships and after school ended, I did another internship with Zach Dakin at TCU. Did my master's at the University of Connecticut under Dr. Kramer and Jerry Martin, and then progressed on to Purdue University. I worked with Dwayne Carlisle. And then last year was my first year with the Indians, strength coach out of Arizona. And now this year I'm in the minor league coordinator role.
Gotcha. So I talked to Eric, who was on your staff the other day, and he let me know that you had interned at TCU, which I didn't know. I interned there a couple summers ago as well. So
awesome.
Zach, wicked smart guy. And
yeah, he's awesome.
He's putting out some real good content now. So I'm sure you've read it and everything, but
yeah, I have. Yeah.
He's definitely.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. He was awesome. And I mean, I was there 2011, summer 2011. And it was, even then he was still like phenomenal, he was still like ahead of his time in terms of trying to get done and some of the things he was doing. So, for all sports, not just the baseball world. So he's done a good job for a long time.
Yeah, commands the room well and runs a great internship program. He's definitely somebody who's a good mentor to have, and if anybody's listening and wants to reach out to him, he's very accessible and he knows his stuff with baseball and any other sport and strength and conditioning, so he's the man.
For sure.
So you're just kind of getting into baseball, like you said. Do you have a best professional baseball story for me? There's some sort of success or something that got lost in translation? Just what sticks out the most in your mind so far?
There was definitely a lot of lost in translation. Being the AZL strength coach, we had a lot of rookie ball guys, and a majority of the guys I had last year were Latin American. We only had one kid that was born in the States. He was bilingual, thankfully, and I had another player that was bilingual. The rest of the team was, knew basically just as much English as I knew Spanish at the time. So it was definitely a year of intense learning in terms of how to coach without being able to be verbal. I've never had that. I've never had to worry about my athletes not knowing what I'm saying to them. So it took a lot of coaching to like get guys in the right positions, showing them, a lot of tactile stuff. So that was definitely like a major change, but it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. And I think it really helped me connect with those guys during that time because, I would try to speak to them a little bit, the little bit of Spanish I could pick up, and they would try to speak to me in a little bit of English that they could. And, I think it really helped kind of bond us together. And we ended up, we're, it's still like a close-knit group that we have.
Yeah, it's been described to me as Spanglish and charades when you're in like the AZL or the GCL, like working with young guys. Most people don't know a ton of Spanish, so you pick up just enough so that you can kind of talk to them in Spanish and put them in the right positions for like a squat or a deadlift or whatever it is that you're doing, and it gets you by that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was definitely just like know enough to say like put 5 more pounds on, like things like that. But it was definitely an awesome experience for me, and one that I don't think you don't get to appreciate professional baseball until you get into that stuff. Everyone sees like the major leagues, but like no one really truly understands like the minor leagues. And even though the AZL is still like a large step, and and I'm sure the GCL too is still a large step from what affiliate life is. But just to get an appreciation of what those guys have to go through, coming to a new country, not knowing the language, not knowing anybody other than basically each other, and how they sort of like form into the group and, how they pull guys in. It's a really, really cool experience.
Yeah, I think each level presents kind of its own unique challenges and experiences for coaches that help you grow as a coach. And that, from what I've talked to other people in the GCL and the AZL, like that's kind of the big thing is it's a guy's first time in the country. They don't know any of our customs or habits or our culture or anything. And so they do things a certain way because that's just how they were raised in their country. Right. And it's not necessarily what we do here. And so you have to teach them life skills and you have to teach them your program so that then when they move up, they're well versed in both.
Right, certainly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so what do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing?
That's a great question. To me, I think, and I don't know if people think I'm crazy, but I mean, maybe they do. My biggest thing is like, I believe in full athlete development. Like to me, sports specificity doesn't even exist in the weight room. I tell our guys that a lot. We're trying to build the physical capacity needed so that the baseball fundamental coaches make you the best baseball players you can. We provide the best athlete that we can, and then they go ahead and build baseball players. Anything that isn't a starting pitcher on the mound against an opponent, that's, everything else is general. That's the most specific as it gets. Everything else slowly ticks away, being more and more general. And, to me, the weight room is the far end of that spectrum. And we do full athlete development. We don't do baseball players. I've never trained a baseball player. I've never trained a football player, even though that was like the sport I was in predominantly in the college setting. I've trained athletes, and everything we do is to enhance athletic qualities.
Yeah, I can be on board with that 100%, man. The thing is, guys will say, oh, I don't ever do that movement, and then in a game they do it, and you're just like, look, you just did that right there. Even something as simple as like karaoke in a warm-up, guys like, oh, I don't do that, and then you watch a guy like run backwards for a ball, and like he gets a bad read, and he's crossing his feet over, and you're like, that's even just something as simple as that, let alone like the actual full athletic movements that we're doing with you guys. Like, and I think the AZL is a really good area to kind of set that tone early. And then when they move up the system, it's like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Like, this is our base. We're making you better athletes so that when you move up, like, between the baseball skills that you're developing and the athletic skills that you're developing, you're going to be one hell of an athlete.
Right. And yeah, and even though at the college setting, most people are really good at their sport, and even like these are professional athletes that we're working with, no matter how young they are. So they're all really good at their sports. Some of them just aren't necessarily really good athletes. And that, you don't necessarily have to be a great athlete to be good at your sport, depending on what that sport is. And that goes across all sports, not just baseball. But it's like, we have some really good baseball players. We may not have some really good athletes. Or we have really good football players, but they can't skip, or they can't do just like kind of basic athletic movements. And you have to sort of reteach that.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it's funny, like the more athletic they get, the better they tend to get at their given sport anyways, at least from what I've seen. So, yeah, I'm reading a book right now, and it's like some baseball players can't even touch their toes, so it's hard to call them athletes. Some of them are just specifically baseball players, and it's like, unfortunately, that might be true, but we're trying to change that a little bit.
Yeah, certainly.
So what do you think makes a strength and conditioning coach successful, maybe in general and then more specifically in professional baseball?
The cliche answer is always like building relationships. I think that's I think that's always important regardless of anything. Everyone wants like buy-in, and buy-in's going to look a little differently for every athlete. But at the end of the day, like there is a level where you want to meet them in the middle. There might be something that you believe is best in their development, and they might not necessarily fully agree with you, or they have like a different vision on how that looks. So it's really just like coming together and trying to figure out what works best for that athlete at that time. There's no necessarily one system that works for one person. There's like every system has worked for somebody at some point in their career. So to not get like pigeonholed and be open-minded, understanding of what's going on and what may make them a better athlete or at that time is really like the way to go. So generally that's how I think like just that whole like relationship building, just getting to know guys, take the time, even if you don't see them, you see them maybe for 6 weeks or spring training, and you may not always spend a lot of time with them, but just be open with them and just be willing to, talk with them and say hello to them and just like overall, like be a good person, I think is like probably a really easy one for like the field of strength and conditioning. Like I think that like is like one of those just, timeless for everybody, not just strength and conditioning coaches, but just be a good person. Athletes are regardless of how young they may be, they're really smart and really intuitive, and they understand like your body language towards them and your body language towards your peers and their friends. So just being a good person, understanding like we all have different experience, we all have different backgrounds, and we all have to be willing to like figure out what works, not necessarily like this is my system, you have to do it.
Yeah, going off of that intuition thing too, I bet you saw a ton of it in the AZL with Latin guys. They are so intuitive to their surroundings where like you can be nice to their face, and then if you go and you start chirping one of their friends, they're like, okay, wait a minute, I don't know if I trust this guy, and they'll shut you out real fast.
Yeah, so is everyone, but especially for those young guys coming over and they're really only friends with each other at the time, till you start kind of breaking down some of those walls, like they're extremely loyal, so you can't, you can't start like ripping one guy and, you can't show favorites. Like you're just going to be a good person, and they'll respect more that you care probably than most of our American athletes do. Just from what I've seen from like working in the college sports, like those guys are so intensely loyal that if you just help them out in any way possible, even if it's like the smallest thing, they'll work harder for you. They'll run through a wall for you. They'll do anything you ask of them. But they, more than like what I've noticed in the college setting, they're way more interested in your loyalty than anything else. They just care about that you care for them and that you're willing to do whatever it takes to make them better.
Yeah, I'm on board with that, man. Like you said, I think all athletes have that intuition of, okay, this guy actually is a good person, or he might just be faking it. But I think it's something to do with their culture, man, just the way they're raised and how close-knit they are, that the Latin guys all stick together. Even like in AAA this year, I saw just our Latin guys stuck together, and if you were, an asshole to one of them, they all would shut you out real fast. So you had to like really be a truly good person to everybody, regardless of the situation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, family is such a big part of their culture and them growing up. It's what you see when they eat. They always eat together. Like, a lot of times you see like the American-born kids, like they'll eat by themselves. They don't really care. Like they don't care who talks to them or anything like that. But the Latin guys, it's a very, very familial culture. So it's one that they really thrive on. And if you start to like pick on one or like pull them out of their element in sort of like an unfair way, that's when they seem to not want to work for you. But they will all work hard if you kind of show them the importance of it and show them that it matters and show them that you care about their development as people and as players.
Yeah, and even something that you think is not like picking on them, or like with American guys you can joke around with, and the American guys like get that you're joking. Like sometimes the Latin guys like, okay, wait a minute, that guy's being really serious here. And it could be something minor, but like I had a guy in stretch last year, and I was like, hey man, keep it quiet during stretch, just joking. And he didn't talk to me for 3 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on, buddy? And he's like, you yelled at me during stretch in front of everybody. And I was like, no. I was joking. And I yelled at all the American guys too. And he's like, no. And then like when he realized I was joking, then we were close as could be, but like something as small as that, like they'll push you away if you're not genuine with your actions.
Right.
So do you have any advice for others in the field, maybe young coaches looking to get in, or even older coaches that have been around a while that just want to stay on top of things? Any advice?
I think, for me, like, still just trying to learn as much Spanish as I can. That's been helpful. And even just like, for me, put yourself on a limb when you're trying to speak Spanish, because everyone asks the Latin players to go out on the limb to speak English. So it's like, why not put yourself on the same limb to try to connect with them? So I think like, for me, like one of my biggest learns so far this year and even last year was just trying to soak up as much of the language as I can and ask guys for help and, continually just be there for them, because, they're a major subset of obviously the baseball population. And, it's important to try connected with them. And, that's been a big a big understanding for me, and a big kind of growth moment for me is like, get with them as much as possible, eat with them. Even if you have to pull out like your phone and go on like translator, I end up doing that a lot. Like, then I'll show them the phone what I'm trying to say, and then, conversation can start again. So I think it's just like, especially with that group, is just make yourself as accessible as possible to them, and just show them that, like, how important they are. And even if like their background in lifting isn't as strong, or they just aren't necessarily like, not necessarily as good as it, but they may not like it as much as as other players, like that's still important for them. And it still matters to them that you show them that you care for them and everything else.
Yeah, and trying to converse with them in Spanish really does go a long way. They can, like we already said, they can kind of smell when you're faking something, and like,
right.
If you're, oh yeah, I'm learning Spanish, and then they talk to you and you're just like, yeah, no, and you ignore them, they don't like that.
Right.
But if you actually try to converse with them, and even if your Spanish isn't great, like, they respect that, man, and they're like, damn, this guy's trying to talk with me, he's trying to build a relationship with me, and they bring you into their family. Like you said, it's very, very family based for them, and they'll bring you right into it. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that's been one of the great things for me, being in baseball, is just kind of learning that and seeing that, and just being a part of it. It's been great.
Yeah, it's a fun aspect of it, especially when you start to get better at Spanish and you understand the jokes they're saying, because they're ruthless, man. They'll talk bad about anybody, and it's all in love too. Like, that, you'll watch them and they'll just be bashing each other, and then the next thing you know, they're playing ping pong together, or they're eating lunch together, or they're running poles together, or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like a family for them. It really is. So where are you going for continuing ed? Are there any books that you'd recommend, or podcasts you listen to, any seminars that you attend in the off season? Where are you going for continuing ed?
I mean, generally, so like, for whatever reason, like I kind of get on like streaks, or like I'll read a lot of books, or I'll listen to a lot of podcasts. Generally right now I'm reading just a lot of research articles, and then have read a lot of, or trying to read a lot of books just about like management, leadership, things like that. So that's where kind of like the research, just about like different topics, I'll just find stuff online that may interest me, or like may in some way connect to baseball. I'm not reading as much stuff as it relates to baseball, but trying to read stuff on different sports, different cultures and how they handle like different training styles. And so that's been a lot more of my reading right now. And then, podcasts, I listen to a lot of podcasts like in the springtime, but have just gotten more into the books right now. But I tend to like flip like back and forth between, really whatever I can find. Sometimes I'll read a lot of books about like, sports training, things like that, or I'll just read a lot of just like personal books for fun, just to kind of mix it up. But I'm never like in one kind of mode forever.
Yeah, I got you. It's kind of just how the mood strikes, man. Sometimes you see, like on Instagram today, I saw something. It was like podcast. It was Zach Dakin. He's on the Central Virginia Sports Performance Podcast, and I love that podcast. Yeah. I love Jay DeMeo, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to listen to that one today. So it's like, if something pops up, like, I don't want to put it on the back burner. I want to listen to it or read it. If I see a book online, I'm like, that looks interesting. I'll order it, and my wife gets mad because I got 10,000 books all over the place.
They haven't read yet. They're just still sitting there.
Exactly. Yeah. I got it.
No, that's like one of the beauties in my mind about social media is everyone, like, obviously people get into like all different training talks online, whether it's good or bad. But for me, I just like being able to find something that interests me. And then if it's like an article link, like I'll pull it up on my desktop, or if it's like someone's posting like a research article, like I'll download that and read that. So it's the great thing with social media is that you can get content right away. And there's really, if you follow you follow good people, you're always out to find probably a good article or a good book or a good little like comment section on a particular topic for that day. So that's really the beauty of social media.
Yeah, it gets bashed a lot just because there are a lot of those, quote unquote gurus on there, or people trying to just pump their products or whatever. But like I said, if you follow the right people who are consistently putting out the right content, you're going to find something almost daily. And it's crazy how accessible information is to us nowadays, that you can just click somebody's profile, look at their link, or look at their post, find the link in it, and now you have a whole rabbit hole to kind of crawl through.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's cool. I mean, I found a bunch of articles yesterday that I read. That I just was searching through, found two quick ones, and they're really really good. But yeah, like the Jay DeMayo podcast is great. The Mike Robertson podcast is great. Those are ones I definitely like when I'm listening to podcasts. Those are the ones like I generally like will flock to first. I know my former boss, Coach Carlisle, he has a podcast where he just did one with Carl Valley. So that would be a good one that I'll read. That I'll listen to here probably the next couple of days. But yeah, there's just so much content out there, so much good content. If you follow, just like you said, follow the right people, you end up getting a lot of stuff to kind of look through, and you're almost inundated with so much stuff. Everyone has a good, there's a good thread here, a good thread there, a good book there. So just trying to stay caught up with it all is sometimes like another job.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's no excuse though, man, to not be educated in today's world, but there are still people that live kind of just this is my niche, this is my rock, and I live under it, and I don't expand out, and it's crazy how you can't do it, man. It's just there's so much out there for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to not find something that you could read.
For sure, man. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Hey, if you have time, I'd like to do a lightning round with you. Do you have time for me?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, first one. Biggest influence in the field of strength and conditioning, who is it?
Probably have to say Dr. Kramer. He was my master's advisor, did a lot of research under him, and just learned a lot about the science behind strength and conditioning, and that's been a big kind of rock in terms of how I program and how I go about things.
One piece of equipment to train with, what would it be?
One piece of equipment. That's a good one. Probably a barbell. There's so much you can do with just one barbell.
Agreed. Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
Biggest accomplishment. Personally, probably getting married last year was a big accomplishment. I think that's always like a big step in your life. Professionally, I mean, I think being able to be trusted in this position that I am, not having a ton of experience within baseball, it's certainly been an honor to be able to work with the group of guys that that I get to work with. And you talked about Eric, and Eric's a phenomenal coach, and fortunate just to be around really good people and people that I enjoy working with on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's very rewarding job-wise to just have good people around you.
Yeah.
Last one. Any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose?
At one point in my life, I wanted to be a BMX biker, but that was 20 years ago at this point. Probably right now, thought about potentially being a firefighter or something along those lines. But yeah, probably the bike riding thing is probably long gone at this point. But yeah, probably a firefighter, something in the kind of the service like that. So
for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on, spend some time talking some shop. I know we were talking about social media. Is that the best place for people to get in touch with you, or is there a better place that we can get more from you?
No, I think I'm not a big poster. I definitely use social media more to collect information than I do to post it. But yeah, I mean, Twitter and Instagram is probably the two that I use the most.
Perfect. Well, I'll link those up, and I appreciate you coming on, man. We'll be talking soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that concludes this episode with Chris. I hope you enjoyed this one. I think he made some really good points on how to communicate with not just the Latin players in your organizations, but with any players that you come in contact with. 3 things that I took from Chris in this episode: learn how to meet your athletes in the middle, be a good person, and use social media to your advantage. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.